So we've installed the DHCP scope, so let's go ahead and get this thing configured here. DHCP scope, right click, DHCP manager. Now I already started it here. So if we go up here, we want to go to our range, and let's go to IP version 4. Right click, new scope. We're going to go through the wizard. We're going to call this class 125. Make it nice and simple. Where do we want to start our range? We talked about /24s before, so let's go ahead and start with 192.168.25. Now, you notice I don't have to start this. I can start this wherever I want to. So I can start it in this case at 10. And then let's go with the /24, of course, because it's the easiest. Okay, so we're going to go with the /24, our standard class C, but we don't have to use the entire range, at least not for DHCP. So if we go here, and I go 192, 168, 25, and I can just sit there and say, let's send it at 200. Okay. Now, exclusions and delay. Now, if I wanted to go back here, I'd like to say my top and bottom range for my static IPs, but I could also do is exclude certain IP addresses. So, for example, to make things easy here, 68.25.100. I want to save, and then, let's just say it's a single server. Right? And I just add that in there. I can add multiple ones in there. Right? Okay, yeah, add those in there. Okay. What is my lease duration? How long do I want to sit there and have my lease? Now, this is where it's like we have to consider how many people move in and out, how large I want to make my scope. For example, at ACC, we have students in there. They're only there for a couple hours, so I might want to set it for something like maybe 3 hours, right, for that lease time. Now, remember, there's a half-life function within DHCP. So at 3 hours, what it'll do, or excuse me, 1.5 hours, what it will do is it'll sit there and start checking to see if that system is alive. If there's no response from the system, then it'll start to do a process called tombstoning. If that system's alive, though, however, it will so go ahead and let it continue to use that DHCP address. Right? Now, do I want to configure options? DHCP by itself is only going to give you an IP address and subnet mask. Won't give you anything else. So let's go ahead and configure the options here. What do I want my gateway to be? Right? Okay, so let's go ahead and configure this here. So remember, I wanted to save my range from my top one, so typically I'm going to keep it in the front range for my router. Right? What do I want to give for DNS? Okay, and this may not work real well, so let's go just frank DNS. What IP address do I want to leave it at? Okay, so for example, 192.168.25.3. Okay, add that in there. Now it's trying to sit there and figure this out. It's not going to find it because it doesn't really exist, so it's going to time out here. So it just timed out. Do you want to still add it? Yes. All right, just for the purposes of this demo. Okay. Win servers, old legacy stuff. We don't need to configure this here. Activate the scope. Do I want to turn it on? Yes. All right. And there we go. Okay. So now, of course, I have my scope, and I can sit there and see my address pool. If I had anything actually using it, so let's say if I connected my laptop to here, I'd be able to see what these addresses were. My reservations. I can have it so that a client can sit there and have the same IP address every time. How? By entering their MAC address in here. So if I wanted to go ahead and add something in there, I would have to know the MAC address and then tell them which IP I want. Okay. I can also do is configure a lot of different options here. So if I go to my scope options here and I go to configure options, I have things like my time server. Now typically the time server is the Windows domain controller inside of Windows, but let's say you have a different time server. Maybe you want to use the national clock, the atomic clock, things like that. So I can add that time server in there. I can add where I want to log things to. Right. I also have things like here, like example, what broadcast address I want to use. So these are all options that we can set in DHCP, although typically don't set a whole lot of those. I can also filter things out. So if you notice here in the description, I can filter things out. So I can, of course, allow anything I want, which is the default. Anything, but let's say I know that we have a bad actor or a bad person that's using this, so we can always use this one as well. We can always have deny DHCP service to any Mac in this list, if I happen to, of course, have to know their Mac. Anyways, that's how we can configure it. Now we can configure multiple DHCP scopes, by the way. So let's go ahead and go here, go into a new scope, and we had talked a little bit about the /30, so let's go ahead and call it a /30, or excuse me, let's go with the smaller, larger one. So let's go with the /28. Right? Okay, where do we want our ranges to go? So let's take a look at what we have for our IP ranges. So if we're doing something, let's say I think I said a /28, we have 8 IP ranges in there. So where are we going to start and stop the scope? Our previous scope was 192, 168, 25, so let's go with 26. And then let's go ahead and start again with 10. What is my end IP address? Okay, so let's go with 192. Let's use a whole range in this case. 26.18. Okay, what is my length? Remember, the bigger that this length goes, the longer my host portion goes. So let's go to the /28. And look at that, it puts my subnet mask in there for me. Okay. Okay, so if we look at this portion here, it says it's too large. Why is it too large? Because I put too many IPs in there. So let's go back a step here. The address or fixing the mask, whichever one's going to fix the problem, right? So then I want to add as my exclusion and delays. Right, in this case I'm not going to do it. How long do I want to keep it? And then do I want to configure these options now? We've already been through that, so I'm just going to skip it. And then we're going to go ahead and add the scope, right? So now if we look here, we have the scope, but if you see the little red dot here, it's not activated. So I do have to sit there and turn the thing on by simply sitting there and hitting the activate button. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hopefully that helps. We'll also do a demo for a router as well. Thanks.